With Oklahoma and Texas now in the conference, Tennessee is 6th in the SEC in budget spending. Is that a concern? I got to be honest, Caleb. Maybe a notch or two higher than I thought it would be. I think that's pretty good, and we'll break down the numbers and pull up the fantastic graphic that breaks it down as well. And this coming from our friends. We originally saw it Saturday down south, and it comes from a gentleman who just loves to do math, absolutely loves to do math, Tony Altamore. So your thoughts on 7th best in the newly expanded SEC?
You know, this was a giant red flag for me at first, by the way. It's the 6th best, isn't it? I thought it was the 6th best. Is it the 7th best?
Well, let's hope we wrote that correctly. I think I did.
I will change the headline now. I apologize, everybody. It's the 7th best in the SEC.
No problem. 7th best in the SEC. Here we go.
Yes. So that's that.
We'll just reset that. Like, should Tennessee be concerned that they have the 7th best athletic budget in the SEC?
I first thought it was a red flag that they should be concerned, because I said Tennessee's way around not being in a football-rich state was having money that other schools don't have, and that includes like the Oklahomas and people like that in Texas. But then I broke down deeper into this, and actually, I encourage you guys all to read Dave's column on it. He broke it down better than anybody. Tennessee has hired coaches at a very affordable price because they weren't high-profile coaches when they hired them. Tony Vitello was an assistant when he got hired at Tennessee, so it wasn't like they had to open up the checkbook Nick Saban style. Now, you can say, before I go further, you can say, well, yeah, but once they start performing, you have to pay them. That's true. But if you have to increase their contract from a very minuscule salary, that's a lot easier than having to increase their contract from the Nick Saban initial salary. So they're already getting them on a better budget than a lot of other schools. They're Josh Heupel from UCF. They just hired Kim Caldwell from Marshall. They were able to get her on a massive budget, and they were able to get Tony Vitello, who was an assistant. So the budget on hiring coaches that they've had to spend is not as high as other schools. That's reduced their budget. And then most notably, in the age of NIL, I think a lot of the money that you would have put in your athletic budget in previous years that came from donors, you're now using in collectives to try to buy recruits and transfers. And I think that's what Tennessee's doing with this.
And the school doesn't feel like they've lost money on that because it makes their product better, which in turn they can sell it for more. They don't sell it for more at the Hemp House. The premier hemp dispensary is online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED for 10% off. I just think you need to be in that top grouping or so of about 10 to 12. Ole Miss is about 5th from last, but I believe they can win a national championship because they found the right guy in Lane Kiffin that needed that job every bit as much as they needed him. Just think you have to be a little craftier. I think Tennessee will be in the position that they can retain Josh Heupel for however much cash he needs at some point, or they can go out and make a big splash hire if he decides to go to the NFL. So I think being 6th in the SEC is really just fine. I don't have a problem with that. Your thoughts while I go ahead and share this on the screen so people can see what we're talking about in the ratings. It's not going to be easy to see. I'm going to warn you, but go ahead, Caleb. As far as being 6th, I don't think that hurts you.
7th.
Seventh.
No, I don't think it's totally my fault. I've confused everybody because I wrote 6th. I don't know why I did that. Total brain lapse.
7th.
I made a Butch Jones on after a touchdown, not going for 2 decision. Okay, but I think Josh Heupel. I think being 7th is fine given where the money is being diverted. Now, obviously, the smart move, guys, is to hire a coach because he can bring his dad in as defensive coordinator, and you give their staff all of their staff members a gigantic salary and a limited buyout, because that's how you go win championships, right, Dave? What you do with Lane Kiffin.
Yes. That's how you do it. You're supposed to assemble this superstar staff, and that has not been Josh Heupel's approach. But if he wanted to, I think he could have had the money to do it. Let me share some of these numbers and see what stands out to you. I'm going to go ahead and share that on the screen. Again, Tony Altamore was nice enough to put this together as I've hit the wrong button 38 times. All right, here we go. We're going to pull that up right now. Number 1 was Texas. That was hardly a surprise, right, Caleb?
Correct. Not a surprise at all.
Okay. And I know you're having trouble seeing this probably at home, but number 2 was Alabama. Given their success, hardly a surprise, right?
Correct. Not a surprise at all.
LSU has 2 national champions. They're number 3 at 199 million. Not a surprise, right?
Yeah, and they also opened the checkbook for Brian Kelly because that's what they had to do to get him from Notre Dame. So
well, but these are not just expenditures. This is the overall budget. So this is the
right,
fact
but that's
that
part of it.
They could afford Brian Kelly. Is how
right.
I would phrase that. I don't think Mississippi State could have afforded Brian Kelly. So then you have Oklahoma, oil money. I was a little surprised that they came in as high as they did. I thought Texas A&M's budget would be bigger. They came in next at the 5th spot. Then Auburn at the 6th spot. Tennessee at 7th, followed by Georgia. Something tells me they'll rise up in the coming years as more and more students will want to go to Georgia because of football, which isn't the greatest reason to choose a college, but you do what you want to. Then Florida, Kentucky, Arkansas, South Carolina, Ole Miss. After that, Missouri, Vanderbilt, and Mississippi State. If I'm those 3 schools at 141 million and less, which is getting close to half of that 232 million that Texas has, I'm worried about getting relegated if there is some sort of super conference that's put together. The 3 schools I'm lopping off pretty easily would be Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, and Missouri, despite what they did last year, would be pretty close to the chopping block. Caleb, am I wrong?
Well, the thing that could save them is that if there is a super conference, and again, we have no idea how realignment is going to happen. Sorry, I'm going to pull us back up just because people can't really see that, and I think they'd rather see us when we break this stuff down.
Probably. It was not a great graphic. Go ahead.
But the thing that I think Tennessee, that the SEC, and that could help Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, is if there is a super conference in the future, as we think is probably coming, or at least SEC and Big Ten, and they adopt their own models and nix the NCAA, and if Congress addresses the NIL thing, you could eventually see an era where revenue sharing comes into play, and where they try the NFL model of parity. And
yeah, I don't see that being, of all the things that we talk about doable. Paying players, we didn't think was possible. Done. Transfer easily done. We didn't think that was possible. Super conference, I think is possible and will happen. But revenue sharing between schools, that seems like the biggest leap from traditional football that we've ever had.
I mean, they already partially do it. Okay, with TV money. With TV money. Let's be honest. That SEC deal with CBS and now the new one with ESPN, they didn't sit there and say, well, we can get some Vanderbilt games, guys. We got to shell out money for that. No, they paid that money because they want Tennessee and Alabama and Georgia, the revenue drivers. But Vanderbilt's getting the same cut of that check. As a matter of fact, go back and look. You can trace the fall of Tennessee football, the gradual decline, with the SEC signing bigger TV contracts. Why? Once the SEC started to sign those contracts, Dave, a lot of those lesser schools were able to shell out money to fix their facilities and their stadiums, which was Tennessee's biggest advantage in the 90s. And biggest case in point by the way, was LSU. People wonder why LSU was terrible before Nick Saban got there. That's because LSU never bothered to build a facility that was worth anything.
They also hired one goofball after another. So I'm going to say that's a little bit of both. But Mike the Tiger doesn't need to have a better facility than the football team does. Portions of the program brought to you by Quality Tire Pro. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. They offer Michelin. All work is covered by a nationwide warranty. Cherokee Blvd or online at qualitytirepros.com. qualitytirepros.com. Stop by. Tell them Off the Hook Sports said hello. Say, hey, Bo. Hey, Bo, how are you? If there is a super conference, is Vanderbilt so embedded that they will be included, or do we look at this with all reality and boot them? Because I don't think anybody should be allowed in the super conference that can't realistically win it. There was a time in the NFL where this is before your time, but like in the 80s, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were like 0-16 and awful. That's not what you need. You need other teams that are going to compete, and I don't think that's Vanderbilt. So if you're going to do the super conference, I don't want to see 10 of those schools be easy wins. And you can see that from my perspective, Caleb, right? Because that's what I'm trying to avoid. You have a different argument altogether. I want to avoid the regular season duds.
Well, I think that this is where the relegation model could come in. Because here's what's going to happen. And here is the problem with revenue sharing. Now, the NFL has so many rules that you can't be cheap if you're an NFL owner. You actually have to spend the money on your team. But what you don't want, the problem that Vanderbilt has always brought is that they haven't bothered to invest in the football program or to try to be good. Is that fair to say? They haven't even bothered to try.
Well, yeah, my cousin's an orthopedic surgeon. He went to Vanderbilt. He could probably single-handedly change their athletic program if he really wanted to. And I'm not exaggerating with the right donation, but they haven't done it to this point. What makes you think he would? And if I brought that up to him, he's a UT fan. He would laugh out loud, even though he went to Vanderbilt.
That's the point of the revenue sharing model. If you're not going to, and that's where you would actually, I mean, you know, this is where Dave's more of a capitalist. He doesn't like the communist model of the NFL. That's why you don't like the revenue sharing. Your philosophy is
I think it's capitalist. It's just capitalist with a bunch of different locations. The NFL is one business, like a bank, with different locations on different street corners.
Okay, I guess technically that's not the case, but I see what you're going with that. But okay,
you and Jimmy, we'll have that argument for another day. Jimmy disagrees.
But the point is, yes, revenue sharing by its very nature is anti-capitalist. The whole NFL model is as communist as you can get. Okay. And
no, let's be clear. I'm okay with revenue sharing, like TV money that comes into the conference, but don't tell me I got to give you $200 of Susie Jane's $1,000 tuition or anything.
Here's my revenue sharing fix, and here's how we'll do it. This is why relegation's important. You share in the revenue based on the level of play that you're at. However, if you don't spend and you start to lose and just collect the check, if you're in danger of relegation, that will incentivize you to actually invest in your program to be competitive. Because if you get relegated, make sure that people in the lower relegated leagues don't make the same money that the people in the elevated leagues do.
All right, I can roll with that.